I gave her intro. Everybody heard her fabulous intro about cooking and the kitchen and everything else because she's wonderful. And so, Melanie, if you want to go ahead and turn your camera and microphone on now, we'll get back to selling off market versus on the MLS. So you should still be able to broadcast. Perfect. There she is. She came up to the stage. Fantastic.
Hi, Marissa. Sorry about
No, it's okay. It's okay. It happens. We did talk about it yesterday when you were using your phone, so no worries, we're good to go. But we're going to jump into it, right? Since we're ready to go.
Of course.
What is the difference, Melanie, between selling off market and putting the property on the MLS?
So Marissa, I get a lot of questions about people asking, like, should I sell my property on the market or off the market, right? Stating the obvious, like on market basically means it's putting it on the multiple listing services. And what that means is it's broadcast to everyone, potential buyers, potential agents, and that gives you the maximum exposure that you want for your property. But obviously a case-by-case difference can depend on the individual circumstances. Off market, on the other hand, is not available on the multiple listing services, and their buyer and buyer's agent has to kind of dig through and try to find out these listings. What I like to call is, it's kind of like a secret listing, right? Only if you're in that group will you happen to know, right? And recently, the Bay Area market has been crazy, right? I've been hearing stories where they're getting 81 offers, right? If it's in an off-market situation, the likelihood is maybe you'll be dealing with 4 or 5 offers versus 81 offers to kind of go through, right? So maximum exposure when it's on market and minimum exposure when it's off market. But so that's kind of like a general difference between the both. Mm-hmm.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much for that comprehensive answer. I think that it's a confusing thing for a lot of people when they're selling to know the difference between those two things. So thank you. So Melanie, if I put a property on the MLS, if putting a property on the MLS seems to provide more exposure, why would a seller choose to sell off market then?
Great question. I've recently closed a few, even my own home that I purchased was also off market. And what I say, it really depends on the seller scenario. I've had, in the past few years, I've dealt with a situation where individuals were going through a divorce, right? And during that time, they wanted it to sell it off market. They were going through foreclosure. They were going through a divorce. Everything that they didn't want happening to them happened to them, right? And unfortunately, sometimes life does throw you some curveballs, right? And how do you go about that, right? Luckily, they happened to find me through an open house, and I was able to guide them into the right direction where instead of selling it off market, we ended up on market. And not only did they not have to go through the foreclosure, they also sold with a profit, right? So reasons that typically sellers would want to sell off market are, number one, whether they're going through some privacy issues or, they don't want to broadcast it to everyone, right? And especially with recently with the pandemic that we've been dealing with, some people don't want any individuals in their home, right? With the viruses coming in and out. And then, so financial difficulties, I said, high-end sellers, a lot of high-end sellers do not want anybody knowing anything about their business, right? Sensitive personal matters, like what I mentioned to you, a divorce, or even wanting the neighbors to know how the layout of your home sometimes triggers individuals to sell off market.
I think that's very true, especially right now. So that's really, really good to know. Thank you. And yeah, makes total sense to me. So what's the difference then in marketing between the two options, Melanie?
So selling off market actually requires a lot more work on the agent if the agent's doing it properly, right? So half the time we see agents like, they'll tell some people within their company. That's number one. You always kind of have this inner sometimes, but what I realized is individuals will probably have to broadcast certain Facebook groups. Individuals will also have to call. I feel like cold calling and letting people know if they're doing it properly. hey, I have this seller that's in an urgent situation. Do you have a buyer for it? Reaching out, networking with other agents is definitely another one, right? One thing to be clear is it's not, I think with on market, it's the same scenario, but with on market, I feel like not only for myself, we do a lot of upfront, like Annie or Anne mentioned a lot, where you're prepping the property so that it showcases at its best light, so that you're also able to get the most offers possible for the property. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That makes perfect sense. And by the way, I'm totally going to just do this off topic, but you look absolutely wonderful today, and just thought I'd let you know that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Give you a little more, take a deep breath and you look beautiful. Anyways, so Melanie, sellers are just always looking to sell for the highest price. Well, we all are, right? So what would be your approach to get them the most money?
Well, your property is most likely your highest asset, right? For all individuals. And I always say that cosmetic updating, our team happens to come in and we'll come in and we'll assess the situation. I've had a scenario where down the street sold for 1.9 as is, and we sold for 2.4 million cash with multiple offers. And it's because we are doing the right protocol, cosmetic updating, and networking, right? I feel like a lot of agents, you have to network with your fellow agents, because we're all in the same boat, your fellow lenders, and possibly tenants that are in the nearby area that are looking to possibly buy. So recently I've been, for all my listings that I have I adore whatever street it is. And I give my top 8 reasons of why I love this place. Because what I always say is, if you don't love the place, you can't sell the place, because it's just like, it has to come out very, very natural. And also being part of the top agent network, it allows me to be part of the top tier of agents, where the likelihood is their portfolio might have a potential buyer that's looking for the same exact property that we have, right? It's all matchmaking. Staging your property. I know we have a wonderful stager that will be talking a little bit more of how it stands out, right? Making the place feel warm, allowing individuals to sit and chat and visualizing themselves living in the place, because it definitely does get you the top dollar. I also feel like professional photography is another one, which we also have another, our photographer is going to be talking to you a little bit more about where his angle is. And I always say, not every photographer are alike, just like not every realtor are alike, right? Some individuals can take pictures of people very well, but when it comes to the space in the unit, certain angles will make a completely different look and appeal and feel. So
100%. Couldn't agree with that more. When we bought our house, it was the same thing. Some of the pictures did not do the inside of it justice. So I completely agree with that. Love that. There's a question in the Q&A, and I'm wondering if we should direct it to you or keep it for Tracy. It is, would you stage an off-market vacant property?
So off-market vacant property, the likelihood is I will not be, right? But we have virtual staging that allows you that opportunity to put it still in its best light, right? Sometimes if the owner is still residing there, let's say in this scenario, this example, the owner still residing there, what I would do sometimes is I would bring in a designer, we'll accessorize the place with partial staging. Maybe, maybe there's too much artwork. Like I just destaged one property where there was way too much artwork on the wall, and it needed to simplify things. So so you can actually visualize the entire space. So we could possibly do partial staging or virtual staging. I would probably recommend for off market. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic answer. I love it. Well, everybody, I think has enjoyed what you had to say, Melanie. We've got some great comments in the in the chat, and someone is going to direct quote you later. If you don't love the place, you can't sell the place. It's going to be attributed to you all over the Bay Area now, Melanie. Thank you so much for this. I don't think there's any other questions right now. I appreciate you being here and your time.